What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? 49 coming at you another community shoutcast for the OUSA Dota League Season 2. We're loading into the winners bracket finals of 5IP up against the Horsemen and Ruckus. So this is game number 1 of a best of 3 series. Last time these two teams went against each other, Horsemen and Ruckus actually 2-0'd 5IP, and probably the most anticlimactic series we've seen to date, considering that both 5IP and HOR, they're the teams most likely to make it to the LAN finals. 5IP unfortunately wasn't able to compete at the LAN and the ODL1 due to several of their members actually not being indeed as well as over break. So this time they really want to make it all the way to the finals. And Horsemen and Ruckus, they had 2 of their players not being able to show up to the grand finals as well for the ODL2 because of, I believe it was a school trip that they had for a geology trip, and so King Killer and Gats weren't able to play, so they were replaced by Caesar Cheese and Brightside New Zealand from Team Struggle, currently known as Eastnut. So now we're loading into game number 1, and Horsemen and Ruckus have first pick. They've already banned out Logan's Lycanthrope, as well as the Pandarian Brewmaster. We've got a Viper first ban coming up from 5IP, as well as the Titans. They're giving away the Tinker, but considering that 5IP have the Radiant side, they're comfortable that if it's a die side Tinker, they can place enough aggression to be able to shut down the Tinker before he really starts to get the ball rolling. And so HOR will be interesting to see what hero they decide to go for first. They still do have the Faceless Void, and this is a hero they love to pick up first, because it gives you a huge amount of drafting flexibility. In regards to, you never know if it's a 1-position Void with HOR, because Dumbledy, they do like to run him as that 1-position Faceless Void, and he is very good at that position. Or they could always throw over the UGTFO, the offlane player. And so the first pick Faceless Void coming up from Horsemen and Ruckus. They've done this in the last few games that they've played in every single series. As long as the Void isn't picked up or banned, they'll always go for it as a first pick, because it gives you a draft disadvantage, because he's such a flexible pickup, and it also means that 5IP, the pressure's now on them. They're forced to ban out support heroes that work well with the Void, that they really don't want to deal with. And so, for instance, standard bans for that include the Witch Doctor, because of the Death Ward, Skywrath Mage because of the Mystic Flare, and the Shadow Shaman. But considering the fact that Shadow Shaman and Skywrath Mage are very powerful supports in the current metagame, at all stages of the game, and usually first and second pick, or if not, they're banned out. Those 2 heroes are either going to be picked or banned. 5IP going for a first pick Undying and Lich, so they're doing the exact same strategy they used up against Blink. So they actually like to run dual lanes to shut down the Death Ball strategy that a lot of teams like to employ, and that's the strategy that's currently very trendy with the current metagame. And so the advantage of the Lich and the Undying is you could run very powerful dual lanes. Lich, if you run a dual lane with a Lich and another aggressive hero, so they like to run the Brewmaster, but in this case they're not going to have access to that, so it could be an Omniknight. You could zone out their offlaner, place a lot of pressure over an UGTFO who's going to be playing that Bristleback. And so with the Bristleback pickup, 5IP, they know for sure that it's now going to be a 1-position Void, because you don't want to run a tri-lane Bristleback unless if you have very aggressive supports and you have a strategy to end the game by about 20 minutes. If you run Bristleback in that 1-position role, he's very powerful, but he tapers off so quickly that if you're not able to capitalize and take enough objectives, he really does become very useless very quickly. And so Razor being banned out by HOR for good reason. Razor hard counters the Bristleback, because every time Bristleback goes the Razor, not only does he get his Warpath charges purged off him, he also gets snared and takes a fair amount of damage. So Razor hard counters a lot of melee core heroes, because you just link the Faceless Void every single fight, and he becomes useless. He's forced to back away and disengage, and that means the Razor's able to run roughshod over the rest of your team. Skywrath Mage being banned out by 5IP, and so they're forced to ban out these heroes that work extremely well with the Void. And so Skywrath Mage and Void's banned up, not so much because it's a very powerful, well, there are other equally powerful combos, but because of how easy it is to execute. Chronosphere and the Mystic Flare, you don't have to commit anything else. You don't have to commit the Mass Serpent Wards, which have an incredibly long cooldown, costing a huge amount of mana. You don't have to invest the Death Ward, which can be easily interrupted, and takes a fair amount of time before it really starts to amp up on the damage. All the Skywrath Mage has to do is just press R, click, and he can back away if he wants to. So it gives you a very risk-free teamfight combination as well as ganking combination. And so Skywrath Mage is usually a fairly standard ban against the Void for that very reason, because at least with the other supports, with the Witch Doctor or the Shadow Shaman, they have to commit a lot of resources in order to do so. And they're going in for a Tinker ban now, because 5IP, they do have the Radiant side advantage, and you never want to give away Tinker to the Radiant side, unless if you have a exceptionally skilled Brewmaster player. But since Brewmaster's been banned out, you definitely don't want to give away the Tinker. And so a 4th ban coming up from 5IP, they might be forced to ban out another Void hero, but the biggest advantage of this is you can't ban them all out. There are so many heroes that work well with Void that you're forced to ban heroes that work well with the Void and also fit their strategy that Horsemen and Ruckus are looking to run. So we could be seeing a Shadow Shaman ban. Gats from Horsemen and Ruckus does like to play that Shadow Shaman in the 4-position role. And Shadow Shaman, the reason why he's such a powerful support hero is because he offers you so much at every stage of the game. At level 1, with Boots first, if you go for Shackle at 1, he gives you a huge amount of killing power against a solo hero, so you could go for a gank mid, which is something that Horsemen and Ruckus do in every single game. They always smoke gank mid to put the fear of God into them. Or if you're going to be up against the offlaner, if you catch him out with the boots advantage and then shackle them, that sets up for the rest of your teammates to be able to go in for the kill. Shadow Shaman also provides actually a fair amount of damage if he's able to get Arcane Boot to level 7 fairly early on. The Ether Shock does an obscene amount of damage. It's a very mana efficient spell. 320 magic damage up to 7 targets, and it's got a low enough cooldown that you can usually get 2 off if the Shadow Shaman's alive and has mana. But they're instead banning out the Outworld Destroyer, so they're going to disregard the Void, and the reason why is because they've got the Omniknight. And so Omniknight makes it very difficult for Void to get a perfect Chronosphere, and so there's 2 ways to deal with the Void. Is either you pressure him in lane, if it's going to be an off-lane Void, you pressure him in lane, prevent him from ever getting to the point where he's going to be a threat to your team. If the rest of your team gets farmed up enough, and Void's not able to kill inside the Chronosphere, then he becomes effectively useless in that 3-position role. Or the other way is to make it as difficult for him as possible to execute a perfect Chronosphere. You want to introduce so many moving pieces that Void is going to screw up, that he's either going to chrono not be able to get a perfect Chronosphere, or he's going to chrono the wrong targets, and the Omniknight works with this fantastically. So all the Omniknight has to do is not get chronoed, or just press the ult before he gets chronoed. But once he gets the Aghanim Scepter, this is something that Sync 2 are able to use very well against Horsemen of Ruckus. He doesn't even have to be in the fight. He could be farming a lane on his own, he could be split pushing, he could be hanging far back, as far away as possible from the rest of his teammates, so that when Void jumps in, when he pops Chronosphere, you pop the Guardian Angel, Chronosphere is now completely useless, and then once the Chronosphere wears off, you turn and you kill the Void, because Void, he's popped his Mask of Magnus, so he still has that damage buff on him, and Void is completely dependent on killing a hero inside Chronosphere. Every time you chrono, you have to kill a target in the Chronosphere, otherwise it's not worth it, and they can turn around and kill you. And so that's a great way to deal with the Faceless Void. Undying also works well against the Void, because if you drop the Tombstone, if you don't catch the Undying, he drops the Tombstone. It means that Void has to deal with the Tombstone zombies as well, niggling away. It means that the rest of his team run in as well, and since the Chronosphere is going to block out a huge amount of their mobility and their movement, they can't get to the Tombstone. And so it means you're going to start a fight with 2-3 zombies up, but the Bristleback hard counters the Undying, and so this is something that Blink Dota used against 5IP, although the drawback to this was Flash, they're actually off for early points of the goo. Every time Bristleback's picked up, he's misplayed a lot, and because players focus too much on survivability. Bristleback, you always have to walk a fine line between dealing enough damage to warrant a lot of focus fire, and being tanky enough to be able to survive when they do turn and focus you. And so we've got a Phantom Assassin pick up by 5IP, so they're going for pretty much an almost identical strategy that they used against Blink. It's going to be Mule in the mid lane Phantom Assassin, and he's been using that hero to perfection. Even if he does get killed a few times in late stage, because of PA's incredible ganking presence, which is something that you don't really expect, it's just due to the fact that she could constantly throw out Stifling Daggers to be able to provide that snare. It's a very powerful snare, and with the coup de grace crit, the Stifling Dagger actually deals a fair amount of damage because it deals pure damage to heroes. And then you've all with the Face Boots, and since coup de grace is now a pseudo-random, you could prime the crit before you go in. So you hit a creep once or twice. If you don't proc the crit, then you know you're good to go. You throw out the dagger, and then the instant the dagger lands, you Blink Strike on them. The third hit you get will have an incredibly high chance of proccing that coup de grace. And since Blink Strike gives you about 4 attacks with a huge increase in attack speed, you're guaranteed to get 1 if not 2 crits in. And that's enough to be able to completely kill that hero, especially with the phase damage increase. But the disadvantage of the Phantom Assassin in that mid lane is she's the only form of damage that 5IP have. In PA, unless the PA is extremely farmed, you need a secondary carry to work well with the PA because she's very squishy. She can be kited. Since she's going to be going for the Phase Boots build, I'm going to make her very squishy, but the advantage of the Omniknight pickup in this case is because Horsemen of Ruckus, they don't have a natural diffusal carrier. PA is always going to have Guardian Angel and always going to have Repel on her, and that's going to make it very difficult. This is something that 5IP love to do, because it makes it so difficult for Horsemen of Ruckus to be able to win these long drawn out fights, and that's where they're at their weakest. The Disruptor faces for Insane King. They rely on ending the fight as quickly as possible by dealing so much damage in the first wave of attack that the Alpha Strike advantage is enough to be able to deal enough damage to the enemy heroes that they kill a few of the backline heroes outright, and they force the core heroes to split and disengage. And then when they break, the Disruptor simply glimpses them back in, and the Sand King's got Blink Dagger so you can catch down the hero in the retreat. So Horsemen of Ruckus are really relying on that initial salvo of spells and the initial amount of damage they could deal out with their teamfight abilities to be able to win them the fight. If 5IP are able to withstand that first barrage, and if they're able to outlast them, then they could turn, and the turnaround potential coming up from 5IP is absolutely obscene. So they're banning out the Darkseer, just in case if it is going to be potentially a mid lane Darkseer. Darkseer can be run mid against certain matchups. Usually it's against a TA, but against other melee heroes, Darkseer isn't too bad in the mid lane. He's got excellent level 1 stats, he's got very high base armor, and with the Ion Shell, he can actually zone out the Phantom Assassin fairly effectively. The 5th ban coming up from Horsemen of Ruckus, they want to ban out a mid-game oriented teamfight hero. And so Titans has been banned out, Brewmaster has been banned out, that's most likely going to be dual lanes going to be run. So Silencer, excellent ban because he hard counts Sand Every time you go in for an engagement, you press the Global Silence and Sand he can no longer ult. If he's channeling his ult, it's interrupted. A way to counter that is Sand for either to go BKB or Yule Scepter, since once you Global Silence, you can Yule Cyclone yourself up, and when you drop back down, it'll purge it off. But of course, the drawback to this is how the hell is Sand going to farm a Yule Scepter when he's going to be playing that 4 position role? The advantage of Sand in that 4 position is similar to a Crystal Maiden. He makes very efficient usage of the jungle. And so, if you're not going for kills early on, which is something that Horsemen and Ruckus, they like to play a much more active Sand King, but if you're unable to do that, or if you're winning the lanes already without the Sand King and needing to be there to apply pressure, you can stack and clear out jungle creeps using the Sandstorm, get your Blink Dagger up that way, and then start contributing to ganks. And a very early Blink Dagger on the Sand King is absolutely game-breaking, especially against 5 IP, since I've got such a powerful early game lineup. If you could delay or disrupt that early game, and give Faceless, Void, and Bristleback a big enough lead, then Horsemen and Ruckus, if the game goes late, they have a bit more chance just because the Undying, he tapers off after about 20 minutes. He's incredibly powerful for the first 20 minutes, probably one of the best early game heroes in the game. But once it gets to the point where the Tombstone can be killed very easily, and since you've got the Bristleback to hard counter the zombies by just using the Quill Spray is physical damage, and the zombies, they're magic immune, but the physical damage will kill them outright. That's the reason why Undying is very rarely picked up or picked up near the end, is you never want to pick up Undying against a Bristleback or against a Gyrocopter. So you usually want to wait and use them as a surprise pick. But we've got a Wraith King pickup coming out from 5 IP, so we're going to be running dual lanes. Probably going to be the Lich in conjunction with the Wraith King. And probably the Undying with the Omniknight. So Undying with the Omniknight over in the off lane to play very aggressively, because it's very difficult to kill those 2 heroes. If you go in on the Omniknight, since he's going to be the one getting farm priority, Undying is able to drop the Tombstone. He's constantly going in your face with the Decay. And we're going to Magnus pick up in the mid lane. Magnus is a hero that actually hasn't been seeing any attention at all in the ODL2. I believe he was picked up a few times in the ODL1, but Magnus pick up in the mid lane, going to be played by King Killer. He's going to be the one to help set it up. So the advantage of the Magnus is it makes Faceless Void's job a lot easier. You now have 2 very powerful initiators that you have to worry for, and that's not accounting for the Sand King. So Sand King can initiate these fights, and Magnus can. All the Faceless Void can, and so it gives them a lot of flexibility to work around with. The Empower also makes Faceless Void do a lot more damage, and so Horsemen and Ruckus, they've got a very powerful teamfight lineup, but the biggest issue with their lineup is it has too many moving pieces. They have to be able to get that initiation off, they have to catch up the Omniknight, because if they don't catch up the Omniknight, the entire teamfight will move in favor of 5 IP. So we're going to introduce the players from both teams. Method Man going to be the 5 position Disruptor. UGTFO going to be the off lane 3 position Bristleback. He's already got a safety ward up on him. King Killer going to be the 2 position running to the mid lane as the Magnus. Gat's actually playing the Sand King as that 4 position role. Usually it's Method Man going to be playing the Sand King. It's his favorite hero, but in this case he's going to be playing the 5. Gat's going to be the 4. Dumbledy going to be the 1 position Faceless Void. Hasn't bought anything yet. He likes to go Quelling Blade when he's playing the 1 position Void just to make sure he doesn't miss any CS. And there you go, he's going for it once again. Ghoulie going to be over on his favorite hero, the Lich, in that 4 position role. Mule going to be the 2 position role as that Phantom Assassin. Although in this case, I guess PS is the true 1 position, and only is going to be what looks like a 2 position, the 2 position Wraith King, and he's going to the top lane. So we're actually going to be seeing what looks like a Wraith King Lich over in the top lane, and Wolfgun going to be the 3 position as the Omniknight. He's the hero that you have to watch out for this game. He's the one that's going to make everything else happen. So if they're able to shut down the Omniknight in these team fights, they win the fight. If they don't shut them down, then 5 IP can turn this. And Broder going to be the 5 position as the Undying. I suppose with the Lich, he's going to be the 4 position, but that being said, Undying doesn't necessarily need items to be effective. Once he gets Arcane Boots, he's good to go. And with the intelligence increase, he doesn't even necessarily need Arcane Boots because he's still very relevant. He can go for a Soul Ring instead. UTFO picks him an Invis Rune, so that's going to guarantee that he's able to almost get to level 2. But of course, the Dire offlane is much more difficult than the Radiant offlane. So the Radiant offlane, you have access to this hard camp right here. So you can pull that, and when they go for the supports go for a double pull through here, you can simply sit back here and leech some EXP passively. For the Dire offlane, much more difficult. We've got a very greedy pub ward coming out from Broder. Usually when you want to place an aggressive ward against the enemy team, you want to place it there, but he knows that because the Bristleback isn't going to be having a sentry ward up on him, it's going to be very easy, and only actually caught up by Gats. Gats go for a bar strike right now. Method Man's there as well. Dumbledy, no response coming out from Gats, and they just back off. I guess they assumed that he'd be too tanky to go in for a kill. And Ghoulie sacrificed, I believe he sacrificed the creep in the mid lane to give Mule a bit of an easier lane. Actually, it looks like he opted not to do so. Well, the second creep wave has just arrived, so it could be the mid lane, but he likes to max the sacrifice over the Lich, and the reason why it works in this dual lane is it's actually a fairly passive dual lane coming up from Horsemen and Ruckus. Gats is the only one that can set up kills. Method Man, he can't really do anything unless he gets a fantastic glimpse off, but even then, it's too risky to rely on. Dumbledy can't walk in, because only can just man fight him. And Wraith King can actually even go for a 1-1-4 build, which gives you the most sustained DPS. But because it's a dual lane against a tri lane, probably wants to go for the maxed out Wraith Fire build. maybe a point in stats early on, or maybe he could choose to go for a point in the aura. Wraith King is a fairly flexible hero when it comes to skill builds. There's a lot of things that work very well with him. King Killer actually gets a good skewer in on Mule, so he throws out one tower right click, actually dealing a fair amount of harassment damage. With the point up and blur, King Killer to me having a difficult time being able to win this lane with right clicks. He's instead relying on that shockwave. It was a good way to deal with the PA, because PA as a melee hero is going to be very easy to be able to land these shockwaves in on her. But once PA gets access to the coup de grace, King Killer has to be very careful. He doesn't want to use the reverse polarity unless he's guaranteed to get a kill. And with that 20% blur, it doesn't seem like much, but it usually can be the difference between getting a kill and not getting a kill if he's able to evade one crucial right click. Only playing very passively, he's got a sentry ward up, so he wants to de-ward in the aggressive wards coming out from Horsemen and Ruckus. But Horsemen and Ruckus, they actually haven't placed any of their wards. So Gats and Method Man, I believe he's gone off now to place them. There we go. So his first ward, he gave one to UGTFO. He hasn't dropped his either. Broder drops a Tombstone, playing very aggressively against the Bristleback. Undying also works well against the Bristleback to an extent, because the decay completely cripples Bristleback's survivability. So the two heroes both counter each other equally well, similar to the Viper and the Razor matchup. It's fairly 50-50. They both are equally good against each other. So it really does boil down to how the players are able to execute it, and what the team fight and what the rest of the context is in regards to the team fight. Since in these team fights, the Bristleback will counter the Doge, because he's able to drop out the Quill Spray and completely disable the Tombstone. The Tombstone's a critical factor of Undying's early team fighting ability. The reason why he's so powerful in the first 20 minutes is heroes don't have enough damage to be able to kill that Tombstone. If you get 2-3 stacks of zombies up, especially with the decay charges making it very easy to get the Deathlust proc, once Deathlust procs, if you're not able to kill the Tombstone, or if you don't have any kind of mobility mechanic, you're pretty much dead. Because every time they hit you, it's a stacking snare, and it stacks up very quickly, only taking a lot of damage from that level 1 Thunderstrike. Ghoulie is able to provide some covering fire up on Method Man, and Gaps, he needs to be the one to be able to set these things up. If he was able to catch him on the Burst Strike, would have been a guaranteed kill. He's been hesitating a bit, and that could be costing them in the long run, as I have to be able to try to secure these kills up against this dual lane. Against a Lich dual lane, if you're not able to achieve kills, if it breaks even, then 5IP have a significant advantage. Because UGTFO, he's been zoned out quite heavily. Gats now goes on the Burst Strike over on Ghoulie. Dumble time walks in, he walks in front of him. Gats is using the Sandstorm for as much damage as possible, and with that Thunderstrike, that should be first blood. Only also fleeing for his life. One more Thunderstrike proc, and there you go. There you have it. Gats runs in to get some experience. He actually goes a bit too far forward. If only had mana for that. That could have actually been a retaliatory kill. But he unfortunately just barely got mana for it now. So it looks like he's actually holding on to his second skill point. Probably should be going for a point up in stats, but instead going for the Mortal Strike, so he's going for a crit into a stun build. Wolfguard diving mid, and King Killer's going to be taken for. He skills himself out, but Mule, he's got the Blink Strike available in 3 more seconds, and King Killer, he can't really juke, especially with the degen aura. So Wolfguard rotates mid, gets a free kill to ensure that Mule has a good lane. And with 5IP, the vast majority of their damage is centered around the PA. Disruptor gets another kill over on Only, who actually found himself a little bit out of position. Looks like Gats initiated that once again with the Burst Strike, since he's almost out of mana. He used himself to keep himself back hale and hardy. And this dual lane from 5IP is starting to fall apart. They rely on breaking even and not getting killed. That's the reason why you have the Lich there, to make it as difficult as possible to go for a kill attempt. And Omniknight actually gets a kill over UGTFO, so both the off lanes having a bit of a difficult time. And Wolfguard, the Omniknight's the hero that I've been talking about. He's the one that's he's the pivot on which the rest of the team turns around. So if he gets a good game, then it becomes incredibly difficult for Horsemen and Ruckus to be able to recover. But if you're able to shut him down, or control him in these fights, then 5IP, they're completely boned. Because the Undying, once it reaches past the 20-minute mark, he's actually not going to be all too effective in these fights. He's just pretty much there to spam decay and provide and draw as much fire as possible, since the Tombstone's going to get hard countered by the Bristleback Cool Spray. And the Soul Rip, it's nice, but it's not going to be something that you want to bank the entire hero on. It does taper off after a certain point, since Dumble will simply be out DPS to heal. And Dumble actually not going for the Hand of Midas, which he usually goes for, over in the Faceless Void, so it looks like he's going for Treads. And King Kill in the mid lane, he still is lead the CS scoreboards, but the kill up on Mule gives Mule the EXP advantage. And Mule, he's now got the coup de grace, and the illusions are actually critting up on him, dealing a fair amount of damage. The reason why Magnus has tapered off in the competitive scene is because the reverse polarity does much less damage. It used to deal 200 level 1, now it deals 50. And so the hero still is very powerful in regards to the control, but he no longer has the solo killing power. Magnus, once he hit level 6, he used to be able to instantly kill whatever hero's up against. Method Man, it's going as Brodo rotates in, Method Man's going to be taking a fall, only sets that up, and glimpses back Brodo, but Brodo, he's not really too fussed with that. And gets something there in Sandstorm, gets as much experience as possible. He does break the Sandstorm. So perhaps thinking they might have had Dust or Sentries, and Wolfguard, you can now leave him alone against UGTFO, because UGTFO can't really do too much. If you play too aggressively against Wolfguard, he stands his ground, pops a Purification, just starts smacking you. With 2 points up in the DJ aura, you can't dive him and you can't escape from him. The reason why Omniknight's so powerful is DJ Aura was the fact that it now applies a 2-second sticky debuff, similar to the upheaval, so when you're out of its range, it's still snared for 2 more seconds. UTFO, diving very deep, he eats the purification to the face, that drops half his life. You have to be very careful against this matchup. He's got 2 points off in the Bristleback passive, he's now dropped his ward to a bit more of a standard safety ward to ensure that you've got vision there through there, to make it difficult for the main team to try to go for these gank offs on you. And so usually, they're going to be placing a sentry around here to see if you went for the greedy pub ward or if you placed the ward there. So by placing it there, it means that you've got a much more higher chance of the ward not being instantly counted. Broda now rotating to mid lane, places a very aggressive observer ward there to provide some high ground vision, so Method Man's now been spotted out. Looks like he's going for the standard build up on the Disruptor, maxing out Glimpse, he eats a Stifling Dagger, that takes out a third of his life. So Mule, he's reaching that point where he's going to start making plays on his own, but Broda's in the body gun to make sure they can't go play aggressive. And now he's got a double damage rune up on him as well. And so if he gets a coup de grace crit, he can pretty much 1-2 shot the Disruptor. And so the Disruptor has to be playing very passively. He's pretty much sitting back so that when Mule runs up and jumps Kin, he can just glimpse him back to prevent him from going in for that kill. Or he can even, he's trying to leech XP as well, because once Disruptor hits level 6, Disruptor's a hero that hard counters the Omniknight, because Omniknight has such a long cast point, 0.54, and Disruptor's got 0 with the Static Storm. So when you see Omniknight raising his hammer, about to use the Purification or the Repel or the Guardian Angel, you simply press R and click it on him. No fuss, no muss, he's now completely silenced, and you win that fight, because the Omniknight can't do anything. So if you're able to, so that all the Disruptor has to do this game is to pretty much focus fire over on the Omniknight. Gax eats his zombies in the face as well, so Stifling Dagger. Unfortunately, no crit. Soul Rip flies out as well from Broda just to force him out of the lane and to make him burn off a bit more regen. But the Tombstone being committed, and the Tombstone in the early stage of the game, similar to Terrorblade's Metamorphosis, is basically an ultimate. Mule running very far forward. Actually, he should be able to catch out Candace Blink. He gets fogged out. And Method Man's out there. He's going to be one taking the forward. I don't know why he ran back in for that right click. He glimpses it back, but he's going to die before he gets there. And Mule gets a very easy kill. Gats catches him out the stun, so he's going to try and turn this around. He has to Sandstorm, though. Sandstorm's on cooldown. And Mule, he backs away. Brothers there to bodyguard him just in case, so they decide to play a bit more aggressively. But Method Man, you can't show yourself, especially when he's got a double damage rune up against the Phantom Assassin, unless you've got an immediate way to be able to control him. So, for instance, the Luna or the Rubik, you can drop the stun at your feet, force him back. You're going to get killed if he gets spotted out like that. Because if he can hit you with a dagger, he's got enough time to ensure that he can Blink Strike you. And the Blink Strike essentially guarantees a coup de grace. The reason why PA works as a mid-hero is since it's pseudo-random, even if he didn't prime the coup de grace, because he gets 4 free hits in with the Blink Strike, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get a crit with that. And a single crit can pretty much make or break a gank. Ghoulie, looking a bit more active now, he's actually opting to max out the Frost Blast this game. And so because there's a Lich, Dumbledore, he can't go for the Randomize, which he loves doing. Because every time he shows himself, Ghoulie's going to Frost Blast him. And it's going to mean that he has to go for much more early to mid-game oriented items, because if he goes for the Midas, they should actually be able to zone him out of lane, or actually even kill him. Especially since he got no points up in the backtrack. Ghoulie, ping's coming out from only to make sure he gets out of the lane, just in case they're playing very aggressively. Broda's also there in the top lane. But in terms of golden experience, about 750 gold lead in favor of 5 IPs. That's due to the fact that they've got a lot more CS, as well as that First Blood. In terms of experience, which is much more important, about 1,000, so that's a Lich macro advantage with the constant sacrifice as well as the dual lanes. Usually TFO actually got the most CS for his team. He's out CSing Dumbledore. This is the first time I've ever seen this happen, and he's actually opting for a very passive build, choosing to max out the Bristleback passive. Would like to see, even if it's just 1 point in the Nasal Goo at level 8, you need a point in Goo if you want to be active. The extra points in the Bristleback passive, they don't really give you too much, because A, you don't have enough HP for it to be useful, and B, they're not going to be focus firing you in the first place. You're not big enough of a threat to warrant that much focus fire, especially when the rest of your teammates are around. And it looks like he's actually going for a Vanguard. I absolutely detest this item on any hero. Bristleback most of all, because it doesn't really give you enough for it to be useful. While I say that, in the mid lane, King Killer catches out Mule with the reverse polarity. Wolfguard looks like he's actually TPing into the mid lane, but while I say that, Dumbledore ran in with the Chronosphere, but was not able to get the kill. Wolfguard, he's got Guardian Angel available. If TP support comes in, this is an absolute disaster for Horsemen and Ruckus. TP spot's now coming in, he's going to pop the Guardian Angel, keep himself alive. Dumbledore, he's out of mana, Purification, and the Chain Pulse flies from Ghoulie. TFO, my friend, you are screwed. He's stuck there, caught up with the DJ snare, and the Dagger now flies up from Mule, and Ghoulie gets a double kill, making plays and taking numbers. Lich gonna take your life. Method Man hugging the tower, he hasn't gotten a single point of experience ever since he died. He now pings out Broda as he spawns him rotating over. With that double damage rune, Broda actually could have played very aggressively if he chose to do so, but you gotta respect the kinetic field coming up from Disruptor, especially when you dive towers, and Undying has awful armor. So Method Man trying to leech enough experience to hit level 6, and Wolfguard doing what he does best, a bit of trash talk. You can't fuck with the Omniscience, and for good reason. Vladimir's offering now up on him. The early Vlad's main is a critical team fighting ability factor in these fights, because it gives Mule not only does it give him lifesteal, it gives him +5 more armor. And with that blur, it's almost impossible to kill him with right clicks at this point. Because he's guaranteed to be able to stay alive long enough with 3 points up, so 40% evasion on right clicks. So they don't kill him with magic damage. It's going to be very difficult to bring him down, especially with the purification. And the purification did so much work, because if you get 2 purifications off, pretty much gibleted Dumbled. And so Dumbled, he's having a very difficult game. He's actually now being out-CS'd and out-farmed by Only. So Only, he's been left alone. It looks like he actually opted to... He's gone for a Blink Dagger. He's got a 10-11 minute Blink Dagger up on him. He actually opted to kill his Reincarnate at 6. I really dislike this. You usually want to hold on to your level 6 skill point until you get ganked and until you need to use your... Reincarnate. Well, Brody gets glimpsed back corner of the bar strike. He drops the tombstone time. Gets a 2-man purification over the 2 supports. Brody, he might be taking 4, but he's bringing someone down with him. Gats, he gets the epicenter off. He should be able to bring down Broder, but he takes a fall. So I trade life for love. And Ghoulie, he gets sprayed down by UGTFO. UGTFO, not saying he's ground up against Wolfgun, but the zombies are there. UGTFO has to be careful. Dumbledy throws out. Crossfit catches out too, but Only still alive. Shockwave flies out. Reverse polarity lands. Looks like Only is able to bring him down with the Wraith Fire Blast. UGTFO is going to be taking a fall as Mule's got the Stifling Dagger. Actually, Blink Strikes to use it to go for the kill. And they wasted the Chronosphere as well as the Reverse Polarity. And in exchange for that 5 IP, they still came out ahead. Mule didn't die. He was actually able to find the kill. He should actually even be able to hunt down King Killer if he's not too careful. King Killer very aggressive because he's got the haste rune. And Mule actually should be taken for unless if Wolfgun's there or Broder's there to heal him. But Wolfgun's dead. He's now caught up with a great glimpse as well as Connect Field coming out from Method Man. And Magnus, King Killer, good recognition coming out from him. He knew that with that haste rune could play a lot more aggressively, and he used it to great effect. And so the reason why I dislike the leveling out Reincarnate the instant you have it is because when you get ganked, even if you're stunned, you can still level up your abilities then. And you never want to waste your Reincarnate. When Reincarnate level 1's on cooldown, it's a 260 second window of opportunity for the enemy team. Longest cooldown ability in the game. And every time you get a successful Reincarnate off in the fight, you win that fight. Especially early on, because they can't handle 2 Wraith Kings. Since if they use all the abilities to kill you in the fight, you're going to come back, and that snare ensures that Mule's able to style on the enemy team, because he's getting free shots in. And Wraith King, he's bad enough to bring down the first time, especially this early on, where they just don't have enough damage, especially given how tanky he is. So bringing him down the second time is going to be absolutely impossible. And so that's why you want to hold on to your Reincarnate, because you don't want to waste a Reincarnate. And by wasting a Reincarnate, I mean if the enemy team ganks you, you're forced to use your Reincarnate because they've killed you and you didn't burn through all your mana in time. And then they simply kill you again, because TP support isn't available for you. And so that means that you've lost the biggest factor of the Wraith King. And this is especially pertinent if you're playing a 4 position Wraith King, because you cannot afford to waste a Reincarnate. But as a 1 or 2 position Wraith King, which is the one that Only's playing, I guess it's not as important, but because you're going to be dragging the game, it doesn't matter if the game goes late, because you're going to be receiving a fair enough amount of farm. But even then, you always want to hold on to your skill point. You lose nothing from holding on to your skill point, but it gives you a lot more strategic control. So Dumbledy, he's going straight for the Mask of Madness. He's been completely shut down this game with those 2 deaths. Every time he time walks in the South Chronosphere and doesn't catch out Wolfgun, Wolfgun destroys him with that purification. It just completely giblets him. And Only, they know he's there. Only's got the Blink Dagger up. If they blink, Wraith Fire Blast, and then Purification, they might actually do enough damage to kill the Faceless Void. They instead going on Gats, Purification flies, 1 crit. Gats doesn't actually Sandstorm. If he Sandstorm, he would have kept himself alive for a little bit longer. Even though when you break Sandstorm, it provides 1.5 seconds of invis. So it would have given them enough time to be able to Burrow Strike out of there. But Gats a little bit slow with his fingers. Fades another kill over to the Wraith King. So Wraith King Only is looking very good this game. Mule over in the bottom lane, so got some TP support coming in. And Wolfgun, he's hiding there because he's got his ultimate up. He's got the repel up. So Mule can play hyper aggressive. TPing in over and Only blinks down time. And Dumbledy and King Killer, they're not really too impressed with that. Mule, he's almost got his drums of endurance up. And once he has that, good luck escaping from the PA. You can't. So about 1,300 gold lead in favor of 5 IP. The experience lead, which is much more critical, about 4,000. And so the macro Lich pickup is doing a lot of work. UGTFO, he's getting critted down. Glimpse flies, Purification latched on him. And UGTFO, because he's going for the Vanguard build, it doesn't really give you anything. Vanguard's an item that you only go for if you're able to get it by the 8-minute mark on certain heroes such as the Axe or the Bristleback, because it lets you play a lot more aggressively early on dive towers. But you have to capitalize with it. Otherwise, if you don't, you might as well go for a mech. Every time you have the option of going for a Vanguard or a mech, 9 times out of 10, mech is going to be the better option because it gives you more survivability overall because it's providing you extra armor, which is something that Bristleback lacks. Especially since you've got magic resistance through your Bristleback passive, and you've already got another way to provide damage reduction. And it provides that EHP to the rest of your team. The 250 heal and the +2 armor you get from the mech active in the early stage of the game is game breaking. If the team that gets a mech first is able to win that first engagement, assuming you can get that mech off, because it's such a huge swing in HP going in favor of your team when in the early stage of the game when damage isn't high enough to be able to out DPS the heal, that you can then translate that kill into towers. So it's the reason why, especially in the current Deathball meta where teams are so active and like to take out objectives very early on, a team that gets a mech by the 8-9 minute mark, they're going to have the higher chance of winning. Because you take that fight, you translate that fight into towers, that fight makes it easier for every other fight. Because now you have the EXP lead from winning that fight, you have the gold lead from taking that tower. The enemy team, they've used a lot of abilities to try to win that fight, but they lost anyway. And so you can continue to force the issue, and every time your ultimates are up, every time the mech is up, you group up as 5 again, you take another tower. And you continue to force the issue, place these wards very aggressively, deprive them of farm, and then kick them when they're down, essentially. You starve them with gold, you starve them with experience, and then you go for the jugular once your team has enough farm. There's nothing they can do to stop you. And so the mechanism gives you a huge amount of utility. It looks like UGTFO actually going for the pipe, but the issue with this is who's going for the mech. Every time you draft a lineup, that's always something you have to keep in mind. The offlane hero or the mid hero usually going to be the ones going for the mech. It's the reason why Razor is picked or banned in pretty much every single game, because he can provide such an obscene amount of utility. He plays very similar to a Viper. He can build. They pretty much build the same items: mech, treads, or phase boots, depending on your playstyle for the Razor, and then build towards the Aghanim Scepter. And it gives you everything you need to be to win the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game. So it's the reason why Razor is so powerful, is he's relevant in all stages of the game, depending on his farm, and he also acts as a mech carrier, so he provides that utility support. Bristleback, he's powerful as an offlaner because he can be the one to go for the mech, so that frees up your support heroes having to buy it. If your support heroes are forced to go for a mech, you're not going to be having it until the 20-minute mark, unless they're able to get an obscene amount of farm. That's never something you want to bank on. You want to bank on one of your cores farming up a mech, because then it lets you take these fights. So usually if I play very aggressively, King Killer goes in with a Blink Skewer, so showing off his Blink Dagger, doesn't want to use a reverse polarity yet. The rest of the team is well in. He now wants to get a reverse polarity in, catches out 3, Broder should be taking a fall. He does die to the course, remember the K-Throw from Ghoulie, decimating Horsemen. Ruckus Method Man runs back into UGTFO, trying to split it, but UGTFO, unfortunately, the bounce is there, and Ghoulie gonna take your mana. Dumble-D Turnport Cell, just barely dodging Purification, but only Blitz right on top of it with the Ray Fire Blast. Pops the corner spray, catches out 4, only actually walks back into that. Gats channeling the Epicenter, they're going in for this. This is the only thing they can do. Catches out 3 with the Epicenter Barrier Strike combination. Wolfcut should be taking a fall. He's not able to get Purification off. Mule standing his ground. He's got the Lifesteal Aura coming in from Only. He doesn't have enough mana for the Reincarnate, but I don't think Horsemen and Ruckus know this. Dumble-D, he needs to kill Mule for this to be worth, while Gats goes in for a start, not able to do so, and Only should be able to clean him up. Only actually completely out of mana. Now standing his ground, the Lifesteal Aura and the Crits of Justice brings down Dumble-D. You come at the king, you best not miss. It looks like Only he sure as hell didn't miss. He looks like he's going for a Maelstrom, so further increases his DPS, especially in the Wraith team, but his building attack speed provides you such a huge increase in damage. Since Wraith King doesn't have much attack speed to work with as a strength carry, and his crit, Mortal Strike, it's actually the 3rd best crit in the game. The 1st best crit is obviously the Coup de Grace, because it gives you such a massive increase in damage, but Coup de Grace is actually a pretty poor crit until you get level 2. Mule's now level 13, so that's not even an issue. The Mortal Strike is about 300% crit, so 3x crit. I believe it's got about 15% chance. Yeah, 50% chance, but pseudo-random. So you're pretty much guaranteed to get at least 1 or 2 crits off every fight. And so the second best crit in the game is Juggernaut's Blade Dance, because it has such a high chance of proccing. I don't think Blade Dance is pseudo-random, but since it has such an obscenely high chance of proccing, 36% at max level, it will proc with every other attack essentially. And that gives you overall much more DPS than the Mortal Strike or the Chaos Strike. Chaos Strike is actually probably the worst crit in the game, because it's so unreliable, but the advantage of the Chaos Strike, of course, is since you've got the Phantasm, you've got much more high likelihood of it proccing. Mule, diving in a bit deep, he's got the Soul Rope. Keep him alive. King Killer forced to use a repel. The reverse polarity on 1. Broder's still diving this. He's got 2 points up to decay, so he should have decay off cooldown soon. But King Killer, he drinks high, he drinks low, and he blinks high, so he's able to get on out of there. But they are able to clean up Ghoulie. But Ghoulie, he's a 4th position hero. He doesn't really give a damn if he dies. So long as he's able to continue doing what he's doing, looks like he's probably going to be the one going for the 4-star for his team. As it looks like the mech carrier is going to be Undying, so a bit surprising. Usually you want the Omniknight to go for the mech, but I suppose since Omniknight's such a high priority target, best not to tempt fate. And the Dirge, mech up on him is actually very powerful, because since the longer he's alive, the much more dangerous he is. Since with that Flesh Golem, the damage amplification aura, as well as the Slight Snare, he just has to be alive in these fights to stand up, and be able to stay alive for as long as possible. Mule goes in over and King Killer, a bit of a misfortunate glimpse. King Killer still going with the double damage. He's got Shockwave coming called out 1 more second. He actually blitz strikes over the Wolfgun, and if King Killer can hit this, he does. He catches him out. Wolfgun, he's now got to be very careful. He uses the repel to keep himself alive for a little while, but it's going to be wearing off soon. Ghoulie, he's got Chain Frost available, so he wants them to clump like this. Looks like they're turning over on Ghoulie, so the Thunder Strikes there provide vision. He frost arms himself. Wolfgun, he's got the maxed out repel, so he actually opted not to max out Degen Aura, because he knew that they'd be fighting a lot earlier on, and so all he has to do is repel Mule and then win every single fight. Because the only spell they have to control them during this is either the Chronosphere, but the disadvantage of the Chronosphere is because they have two other melee cores. Magnus can't do anything inside the Chronosphere apart from maybe throwing out a Shockwave here and there and empowering. Bristleback can't do anything. I guess he could throw out the quill sprays, but a good chunk of his damage does come from his right click with the warpath stacks. And so it means that they're only contributing to the spells, and they're going to reach the point where the spells aren't going to be enough to be able to DPS people down inside the chronosphere. So Dumbled, a lot of weight is on him. He has to carry his entire team through this, and the issue with this 4 Protect 1 strategy is when you are facing a Guardian Angel with the Omniknight ultimate, every single time he gets a successful Guardian Angel, Horsemen and Ruckus are going to lose this fight decisively, because they just don't have enough damage to be able to power through the Guardian Angel. And since the vast majority of the damage is centered on physical DPS, and so Dumbled as well as Method Man, a lot of pressure is placed on them. They have to be able to get these good ultimates off. If they get a good Static Storm off, as well as a good Chronosphere, they can win a fight and take a fight off that. But Disruptor, all he has to do is pretty much just prioritize the Omniknight every single time. Well, I say that, UTFO once again takes a fall. The reason why the Omniknight works well against the Bristleback is the Bristleback can't chase him, and the Bristleback can't flee from the Omniknight. But not only that, because Purification is pure damage, if you catch him in the, head on the face, that's a good chunk of life from him. And with that Vladimir's offering, looks like he actually opted for a Blink Dagger, so that gives Omniknight even more control. He doesn't have to be anywhere near the fight. Gats eats a coup de grace crit. Dumbled, he goes in, throws out Chronosphere over, and Brother went on the wrong target as Wolfcoat coming TPing, and it only comes in as well. Catches out the reverse polarity over on 1, glimpse back coming out from Method Man, but the Chain Frost is blowing out. Gats, he's trying his epicenter, only gets Mule, but Mule just stands his ground, and then he crits him in the face, styling all over him. Wolfcoat's now joined the fray. King Killer, the only one to survive, and he gets on out of there, and the backtrack. Looks like Dumbled backtracked for a while, but unfortunately just wasn't enough. He's got about the same amount of farm as the same amount of net worth as Only. Actually, Only's actually ahead of him now because he hasn't died, so his net worth is much higher. UGTFO has the pipe, but when you've got a pipe and no mech, it's not enough survivability. He needed to go for a mech much earlier on. The analogy I use for this every single time is a pipe is basically a column. You have to put it on before you want to get down and dirty. If you don't use it before you go in, and if you use it when they're throwing their spells at you, it's not going to give you anything. Because the survivability you get from a pipe isn't as high as you think. It's 400 magic. It's a 400 magic damage barrier, but it's before magic resistance. And so in that case, it'll block a Wraith Fire Blast. It'll block maybe the 1 or 2 bounces. It'll block 1 bounce of the Chain Frost and a Frost Blast, and that's about it. And it doesn't seem like much, because it really isn't. The only reason why you go for a pipe is if you know you can guarantee the initiation, or if you're going to try Breach High Ground. Well, I say that. Dumbled, he gets blown past the Wraith Fire Blast and the Purification, hits him in the face. Gax can Barrow Strike him, but he's got no Epicenter available. Usually he's snapped up with the DGen aura, and then still continuing to chase. Guardian Angel being forced to ensure the King Killer can't turn around with this. Gax now caught out of position once again as he gets caught out with the stun. No standstill available. He could have actually tried to juke out the Wraith Fire Blast. And it looked like they didn't have any true vision available for them. King Killer doing what he can, but it's him against the entire team at this point. And there's nothing he could really do. He's going to keep throwing out a few cheeky shockwaves, but if he gets caught up by a Mule, could be throwing his life away. Drums, actually 4th drum charge has been used very early on. Only his use his reincarnate in the last fight, so is on cooldown. But it'll be coming off cooldown fairly short. He's actually got a level 3 reincarnate 24 minutes in the game. This is absolutely obscene. It's a 60-second cooldown. He's guaranteed to have a reincarnate every single fight. Horsemen and Ruckus have got no way to control the Wraith King. So if you try to control the Wraith King, Mule completely wrecks you. If you try to go on a Mule, Only then wrecks you. So they're in between a rock and a hard place. It's a 12,000 EXP lead, 24 minutes into the game. And the gold lead about 7,500, probably going to be about 8,500 once the tower gold's calculated in as well. But the gold lead isn't too critical. It's the experience lead that's breaking Horsemen and Ruckus' back. They've got the level 2 episode available. Gat's nowhere near his Blink Dagger. It's the fact that you've got the 60-second cooldown for the Wraith King. So Wraith King, he can split push. Because every time he dies, he's guaranteed to get a reincarnate. 60-second cooldown on the reincarnate is absolutely ridiculous. Because if you stay alive long enough, you can actually, if a fight goes long enough, you're able to disengage and then re-engage once it's back off cooldown. You can constantly apply pressure. And with that Blink Dagger, the backline heroes can't get away. The disadvantage of the Wraith King is Wraith Fire Blast has such a slow projectile speed that Sand King should be able to easily destroy the Wraith Fire Blast every single time. When he blinks on you, you immediately just press W. When you hear the blink sound, you W, and you should be able to destroy the Wraith Fire Blast. King Killer can do the exact same thing with his blink. And Sand King, you can tell how good Sand King player is by how quick he is with his reflexes on being able to destroy abilities. Because Sand King is a fairly squishy hero, and he's got these abilities that force you to constantly be up in their face. And so he makes up for it by having 2 very powerful destroying abilities. You can destroy it in the Burrow Strike, you can destroy it in the Sandstorm, and he usually goes for a blink, so you've got 3 destroys available. So similar to a puck, you have to be quick with your fingers and quick with your reflexes to be able to capitalize, because Wraith King, the reason why he goes for a Blink Dagger is not only does it let him close the distance very quickly, but it ensures you get a Wraith Fire Blast. Because if you're throwing a Wraith Fire Blast from max range, it's incredibly easy to destroy them. If you have a Blink Dagger, or if you have any kind of ability that could allow you to destroy it. Top lane, Dumbled should be able to get the tower. He eats a Wraith Fire Blast in the face. Only actually could choose to deny it. He denies it. He's got Reincarnate up, so he doesn't give a damn. Dumbled, he time walks out there, but only blinks on up. Wraith fire burst available, throws it out, should be able to catch out Double D. Reverse polarity being used on 2, but Mule was the corner, is going to haste through. Crux now being used as well as the Chain Frost. Chain Frost actually catches out his teammates. Double D takes the fall. Ghoulie, please. Startling all over Horsemen and Ruckus. Stormer brings him down. Venom Assassin looks like he actually got a Stifling Dagger crit. Brings down Gats as well, and Method Man, there's nothing he can do. He's fleeing for his life. Molinaire now up on the Wraith King, so he's right-clicking incredibly hard. Mule used up his last drum charge there. He's got the Cranium Basher, so he's also guaranteed not only to get a coup de grace crit, but to get a bash. And Method Man, he actually spots him out. He picked it up earlier. 1, 2, 3. He brings him down. Didn't even need a stun coming out from the Cranium Basher, and that's a tier 2 target to be taking a fall. In terms of gold lead, we've got about 9,000 gold lead going in favor of 5 IP. Going to be 10,500 once the tower falls, and 15,000, actually 17,000 EXP lead. Very difficult for Horsemen and Ruckus to be defenders. They do have a great high ground defensive lineup because they've got the Epicenter Burrow Strike, they've got the Coin Span, they've got the Reverse Polarity. But the issue is that only can slow siege. He's got Reincarnate. He doesn't give a damn if he gets initiated at all. He doesn't care if he dies. He's got that Reincarnate that will just barely be able to bring him down at this point because he's so damn tanky. And it looks like Mule's about to get an Aegis as well. So the PA and the Wraith King, they can push up in slow siege. Wolfgun, he just hangs back in the rear, waits for them to jump him, and then he blinks in the Guardian Angels. And then you turn and you're able to win that fight. So no BKB needed. This is the advantage of the Omniknight. He saves your cause 4k gold, so you can just build damage. You don't have to focus on any kind of survivability because the Omniknight's there. He's there to safeguard you. It's the reason why he's such a powerful hero. If you give him the ideal, if you give him enough golden experience in laning phase, the reason why Omniknight's balanced is because A, he's got a terrible cast animation, and B, he's a very greedy hero. You can't run. You have to run him as a core. You can't run him as a support hero because he's just too damn greedy. Unless if the enemy team makes a mistake and they're not able to pressure you enough when the Omniknight's weak. And so because, while they did actually take a few kills over in the top lane, up against Only and Ghoulie, they weren't able to do anything with the Wolf Gun. So 5 IP, countering the 3-1-1 lineup by going for a dual lane in the bottom lane. And that dual lane was able to completely destroy UGTFO. Wasn't able to actually receive all too much farm. Mule just diving on UGTFO, doesn't really give a damn. Purification provides an extra amount of damage. Repel is now up on him. Dumble, he calls Stifling Dagger. One crit with the bash brings him down. He's got the Abyssal Blade used as well. King Killer's got the Reverse Polarity available. Gat fleeing for his life from Broder. He runs in. Reverse Polarity's being used. Never mind, it was actually cancelled. Now he's going to go for it. Ultra Kill up on him. Mule looks like he's going to be getting his second rampage of the ODL2 as King Killer doesn't have enough damage to deal with him. And Mule needs the rest of his team back away. Mule gets another rampage. And Horsemen and Ruckus are falling apart. Wrecked coming up from Wolfguard. In terms of gold lead, we've got a 14,000 gold lead. 16,000 gold lead now going in favor of the boys from 5IP. GG well played being called 29 minutes in. And 5IP using the exact same strategy they used against Blink, able to take a very easy game number 1 up against Horsemen and Ruckus. We're going to be taking a quick break and we'll be right back for game number 2, so stay tuned for more Dota.